you again, and invite Vera Iro, the president of ERSAR, and the first list of panelists for the first session. So you can jump up, everybody here. And I give you the floor for this first session concerning the measurement of the impacts of Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive. It's a very interesting survey, the one made by ERSAR, and some figures will be shown in terms of tariff impacts and impacts in terms of costs. Vera.
Thank you. So I would like to introduce a little bit of Vera's profile. So Vera is the president of the board of directors of ERSAR, the Portuguese water regulator. She is a lawyer specialized in public law, used to work at the Linklaters company. She's a public law professor at Nova University Lisbon, and she was assistant at the Portuguese Constitutional Court. She has a PhD in law, and she will present us a little bit of the findings that WAREG has reached in this study of the impacts of the new proposal for the Wastewater Treatment Directive. So Vera, please.
Very well. This one? Ah, okay. Okay. This one is, oh, very well. So good morning, everybody. This is a pleasure for me to be here as ERSAR's president, the Portuguese Water and Waste Regulatory Agency, and also as the vice president of WAREG. So everybody is welcome, present or online. And what I will be presenting today is just a preliminary conclusion and the preliminary results of a study that we have made within WAREG. This study was made and coordinated by ERSAR, by the team of ERSAR, but of course this is a study that results from the work that the members of WAREG do on a daily basis and their data that was provided to us in order to reach some of the conclusions. So our main goal here was to try to assess in a more detailed way what would be the economic impacts of the new wastewater treatment directive, so the revision that is currently undergoing. This is something that is underway, so we have this relevant line time commencing in 1991 with the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive. And now we are in the middle, more in the end of this revision of the Wastewater Treatment Directive, which is something that is crucial for the sector, which is something that is crucial for the environment. And so this is something that we all want to happen. But of course, when we think about this revision as regulators, we need to understand what is the impact, the financial impact, and now we are considered CAPEX and OPEX, what is the impact that this might have in the tariffs that we need to calculate on a yearly basis, and that will be the prices to be paid by the services rendered in what regards the wastewater treatment services. Well, so this means that the context of the revision of the Wastewater Treatment Directive is very complex, very difficult, and so there are relevant challenges here. Of course, what we are aiming at is to reduce the pollution from urban sources. So there is the need to reach energy neutrality by 2040, of course. And the revision actually sets out goals that are difficult to implement, that have been implemented in other sectors such as the waste management sector, and I'm meaning here the extended producer responsibility schemes approach. This will be very difficult to implement and very necessary when we consider the costs that we will be facing to reach these targets connected with the reduction of pollution coming from urban sources. So when we look at the initial proposal that was made by the European Commission, and I think that it's necessary to be clear about this, our assumption was the initial proposal of the European Commission, so that was where we started when we tried to understand and assess the cost estimates. We started with the initial proposal, and what the Commission has stated is that by 2014, there is a total cost estimate of 3.793 billion per year, which is below the expected monetized benefits of euro 6.643 billion per year. And these additional costs connected with the implementation of this revision of the wastewater treatment directive should be covered by a combination of three. So water tariffs, 51%, and this number I propose that you have it by heart because it will be necessary in the end of my presentation. So 51% water tariffs, 22% public budgets, and 27% for the new system of EPR connected with cosmetics and pharmaceutical products. So what the Commission expected was an average increase in water tariffs by 2040 of 2.26%. Well, fair enough, with some difference between member states. So there would be no overall affordability issues expected in water services in any member state, despite the increase in tariffs. So this is the number that we started from. And as regulators in Portugal, we try to assess, well, is this something that is feasible for Portugal? Is the 2.26% a number that it matches the reality in Portugal? And so we, as regulators, started to collect data from our main operators in the system, and the preliminary estimates for the Portuguese operator group point to an average increase of 32% of the tariff. So remembering the 51%, we are just covering costs, so this means that if everything happens well, then at least 15% of increase in tariffs if we have the mix of the financings that I referred before. So when looking at the documents that were prepared by the European Commission, we see that there is no detailed information on how costs and benefits were calculated. So this means that it is very difficult to replicate the estimates and to understand where this 2.26% comes from. So what we tried to do was to actually look at WAREG's reality, and it would be really nice, okay, and try to estimate on treatment upgrades. So there's this model that comes from the Portuguese study that we made, and we spread across the WAREG's members and observers to understand what would happen in this implementation of the revision. So this study that we did, crossing across other member states that are WAREG's member, had some assumptions. So we limited the study to 3 articles connected with mostly upgrades on wastewater operating systems. So we tried to limit the study as much as we could because it would be very difficult to assess costs covering the whole revision of the directive. So we only consider the costs that arise from the revision of the directive. So when there is upgrade needed to reach the treatment levels that are already in this version of the directive, this was not considered, and we only considered CAPEX and OPEX, so no rate of return. So this is purely covering costs. This is the assessment that we made. Of course, these results are preliminary. We didn't have the data that we have is not equal for each member state, and so we had to rely on 2 or 3 countries in order to have comparable data. So this is a preliminary estimate. We will finish with additional data that is coming to us by other members of the WAREG, but I think that this can already give you an impression of what we can be facing and what we need to be prepared to do when implementing the revision of the wastewater treatment directive. So we try to collect data upon the number of wastewater treatment plants that will need to be upgraded, approximately 28%. And then the data comes from mostly these countries, so Ireland, Italy, Estonia, Lithuania, Malta, Portugal, and Romania. And then we tried to do CAPEX and OPEX estimations per equivalent people so that we have a way to measure how many people are going to actually benefit from this upgrade so that it is comparable according to the dimension of the investment. So we try to make these types of comparison because then we have the delta capex per equivalent that is comparing to that makes it easy to compare, like Portugal with Malta, Lithuania, and so this is the value that needs to be compared between the countries. So we did it with capex. We did it with the OPEX, of course, and of course, when we compare capex and OPEX, we didn't add because OPEX is annual and capex means the long-term investment. So we cannot add capex to OPEX in these particular estimates. But then we have this delta that needs to be considered for capex and OPEX in each of these member states. This means first that there is a relevant difference between member states that needs to be considered. So when we are speaking about an average percentage of 2.26% in tariff increase in the European space, that means that we have different realities to consider, and so member states are pretty much different on this regard, and that should be considered. But what this means is that we have a very relevant difference in capex when implementing the EU revision of 46% per equivalent and 6.5 euros per equivalent also in the OPEX. So this means that this impact will depend from country to country, but if no other sources of financing are considered, this would mean an increase of almost 30% in consumer tariffs according to the estimates of at least 2 countries. We will increase this data, but considering the mix of financing that I referred in the beginning of my presentation, so if 51% needs to be covered by tariffs, this should be halved, this should be considered in half approximately. So at the very least, this means a 15% increase in the tariff setting. And this is just a baseline without rate of return and having the estimates made on a very conservative baseline. So this is the appetizer for the discussion, actually. This is something that needs to be considered by the regulatory agencies, of course, because at the end of the day, we will be the ones calculating the tariffs. But this also needs to be considered when the package is approved, because to be able to finance these activities, we need to be carefully looking at what does this mean for the consumer. Will the consumer be able to pay this or not? Is it something that needs to be financed from a different perspective other than the tariffs that are going to be applied to the consumer? So we need to do further work here. and we will do this in the next 3 months to estimate impacts in the various BOREC countries, and because the realities are very, very different from each member state. Consumers will suffer impact in their tariffs, so we need to prepare for this. Other sources of pollution need to be addressed too. It's not only the urban sector that is relevant here. And so this is something that at the end of the day means that regulators can provide reliable information and economic inputs for better policies, and we need to do the maths. We need to estimate in order to be prepared and in order to actually implement a relevant change in this legal framework. So this is just the appetizer for the discussion. Thank you so much.